This is Life Transformation Radio. Prepare to engage. Seatbelt activated. Download initiated. Your quantum journey of transformation begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. Hi, I'm Rob Actis, best-selling author of The Law of Action, voice actor, business mindset coach, the podcast whisperer, and Mr. Action himself. Here at Life Transformation Radio, we are committed to share more about real life, love, the power of positivity, romance, and of course, laughter. We care about helping others find their internal drive and purpose. We celebrate life's challenges and overcoming them. On the show, my guests are amazing people who are forces for good in the world around them and live a life of transformation. My guest today does just that. Today, Gayle Lynn and I discuss transformations of relationships, from monogamy to swinger to polyamory to ethically non-monogamous. So if you want to understand what it takes to design a relationship based on your terms, this is the show for you. Gayle Lynn is my friend, and she's a relationship coach. She specializes in non-traditional partnerships. She has a passion to help everyone have the relationship they desire, not what society, family, or religion says. She empowers her clients to make educated choices about their relationships, and she has no agenda and wants people to make their own choices, whether it's being monogamous, open, polyamorous, or swinging. Hi, Gayle. Welcome to Life Transformation Radio.
Well, thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. We've got lots of shows in our vaults, and the response for this past show that we did just a few weeks ago was quite remarkable. The listeners want to hear more, and so I had to have you back. I was really just blown away by the response that we had from people, them all reaching out and just saying, that was so fascinating and interesting. We've been talking about that, and it's like, I think the tides are changing in the world. I think people are just trying to go to the beat of their own drum, and I think they're tired of the conformity, and I think they're just ready to be their true, authentic selves.
Well, I would totally agree with that. I'm seeing more and more exploration and more people, and not just in their relationships, but just in every part of their life, really, stepping out and saying, what more is there to this life? And wanting to live at a different level than what they've been living.
I think in this situation, everybody's really been kind of locked down, and they've been strapped in and buckled down, and they've had a lot of time to reflect on what their life was. I think a lot of people regretted where their life was, and a lot of people, I think a lot of people thought they were playing small, and people are starting to play a lot bigger.
Yeah. It's one of those things where when you go into silence, if you're a meditator, or you go into those spaces, or even going out into nature where you can just get a pause in life, then you start, really seeing things so much more clearer. And that's when the questions start coming up. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Yeah. And COVID was a big pause.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also triggered a lot of people, and I think further discussion is needed. We talked about transformations, and I think it's really fascinating how a relationship that can transform from being the static monogamous, which is just a society's norm, to other types of relationships, whether it's, ethically non-monogamous or polyamorous or swinging. I think that's a fun conversation to have today. So thank you.
Well, it's interesting because, people who respond like that, my view on it is really monogamy is a sacred path, just as much as polyamory or swinging or whatever it is, it's all sacred. And it's how you view it. It's not that we're out there being willy-nilly and, living life and having sex all over the place. It's something we're choosing. And when we choose that, that's where our growth is coming in. We get to learn a little bit more about who we are in this world. Every time we're in whatever kind of relationship we're in, we have that opportunity. And so when somebody is judging, it's like there's no need, because your path, if that's the path of monogamy that you chose, then be devoted to it. Make it your sacred path. But that doesn't mean that that has to be for everybody.
Yeah, I believe that. Absolutely right. I don't think that people that are open or poly or swinging, I don't think they're out there recruiting all the monogamous people. I just don't think that's the thing.
No, they aren't. It's really something I think that people find within them, because this curiosity starts welling up. And curiosity is a beautiful thing. It's it allows us to expand our lives. And if people would stay in that curious state instead of always feeling restricted, it's like come back to being children. What did you do as a child? You're born into this world and you're looking for things, you're discovering new ways, and what is this world and how do I behave in this world? They are curious, and somewhere along the way we lose that childlike curiosity. And so when when we have those quiet times, when that curiosity will start bubbling up inside of us. And so it's not like people are coming out there, but I kind of find that the university is very synchronistic. There's a lot of serendipity that happens. And so oftentimes what's going to happen is it's going to start coming up in your field in all different ways, which means the universe is kind of speaking to you. Hey, what do you think about this? Let's see. Is it time for your relationship to evolve?
Well, there's a TV show on. I don't think it could have been a show that would have been such a mega hit a couple years ago, but there's a TV show on Netflix. It's called How to Build a Sex Room. And that has opened up so many conversations. I mean, it's funny how many people that have seen the show, and I really like the show. It's fun to watch, How to Build a Sex Room. And it's really opened people up. So it's kind of like when you're looking for a car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere.
Right. Yeah. You get that activated in your brain and all of a sudden it starts showing up. Just like that show probably came across certain people's path because it was like, hey, let's take a look at this,
Now it's everywhere. Well, it's almost like I don't even know how long ago it came out, but 50 Shades of Grey. When 50 Shades of Grey came out, it became just regular general conversation to talk about kink and, dom and sub relationships. And it was amazing to me how it became so mainstream so fast because they homogenized really what that conversation was. And people were like, oh, and it allowed people to explore. I think a lot of people that are in monogamous relationships, it's just so much that they don't know what they don't know. And yeah, they just don't know, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's with all of us, right? It's just different areas of our life.
And, having really in-depth conversations with you and some of our friends, and it's amazing that different types of relationships and how happy people are, that they are living their authentic life. And, one of the things that I've heard time and time again for people that are in these different types of relationships, especially ones that are married, is it's strengthened their relationship. It's made them stronger. And one of the things I know about these types of relationships is you have to really elevate your level of communication than what you have in a monogamous relationship. In a monogamous relationship, you can kind of go day by day and not really talk about much. And in these types of relationships, there's massive communication.
Oh, absolutely. There is. And that's one of the things that I help people with a lot, because there's, like when I was going through this different evolution in our relationship, we would have conversations after conversations, and we were just going in these circles. So I call them communication circles, where we're not really getting anywhere. And so we're repeating the same pattern, the same cycle, the same conversation. And once you learn how to really effectively communicate and reflect back to people what they're saying, and you're really on that same page, it brings things to a completely different level. And it strengthens the bond between you.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is you could take baby steps in this. A lot of people that are in monogamous relationships, baby steps. Well, I'm an incredibly big flirt. I mean, I flirt all the time. It's just something I've been doing since I was a little kid, and I love to flirt. It's fun. It's fun to interact with people, and fortunately, my wife was okay with me flirting, and still is. And it would be really difficult, on the other hand, if I didn't have that permission from her to flirt. Now, I believe in ethics and integrity, and if that wasn't within the boundaries of a relationship, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And then if I did do it, it would be against the boundaries, and that wouldn't feel good either. So I don't do it.
Right. And in those situations, that's where you have to really, those are decision points when things like that come up. And, if there's certain boundaries that one person has to have, or chooses or asks for, and the other person really feels like it's going against who they are, that sometimes can become a choice point of where is the relationship going to go, because some people, they bring it up and it's like, yeah, I can do that. There's totally no problems. I hear your request. I see why you need it. You've communicated clearly why you need that for you. And I would love to do that for you. And then there's the other part where, you have to, is that really okay with you? Or are you really shutting down a big expression of who you are? Because it needs to go both ways. Sometimes that person needs to kind of compromise too. So in those situations, we have to get down to the root of why that insecurity is there. Why do they feel compromised that you just want to, flirt and give hugs and just be friendly with people, right? And so sometimes you need to shut it down for a while until we can get to the root of it, but really it's getting to the root.
Yeah. So one of the things I would think would be with all of these open poly or swinging relationships would be, the J word, jealousy.
Yeah.
I would think that would be, big deal. Now, you told me a word called compersion, which I think is just a really incredible thing. But I would imagine that, jealousy in this type of a lifestyle could make things really difficult. So do people stop being jealous in these relationships, or do they overcome jealousy, or they transform into compersion?
It can go all kinds of ways. You can feel, jealousy. Okay. Jealousy is often given a very bad rap, right? But what it is it became an evolutionary thing for a mate retention is kind of what happened, right? So, that's what we need to find out. What is the layer of jealousy? Because there's several layers to jealousy that we have before you can really get to that freedom. And so sometimes, you release one layer that might just be, not enough communication in the relationship. Another one might be releasing some envy that's happening, or guilt and shame, or belief systems. See, we've got all these different layers that we've got to get before we can get down to that core freedom that is really compersion. And so sometimes it's a process, but can you eventually transform it? Yes, I believe you can, but it does take the inner work to be willing to do it. It doesn't just go away. You can't ignore it. It's because it's something in you that is asking to be transformed.
So explain a little bit more detail what compersion is, because it's a word that many people don't know. And you explained it to me so beautifully. So what is compersion?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you didn't hear the last podcast, the word is compersion, and it's one that's used quite often and was formed out of the polyamorous community. And what it is this vicarious joy that your partner is happy. And so if they're happy having sex, then you're happy because they're happy and they're being fulfilled. Oftentimes, uh, you know, we have these attachments, and that's part of jealousy is, when we have these attachments, um, you know, those are going to cause suffering, right? So when you can actually become unattached, um, then that compersion can come in. That just wanting your spouse, whoever it is. I mean, we all want everybody to really be happy, to be living their best optimal life. But then sometimes we come down to it, but it feels like a threat to us. And that's where the jealousy comes in. When somebody feels that, their livelihood may be at threat, their self-worth may be at threat, those type of things. So can you see where when those are no longer threats to you because you know who you are inside and you know who your spouse is or your partner is, then that freedom will start coming, that compersion where you're just, hey, you're having a great time. I am so happy for you. That's all I want.
Right. All right. Well, the promises of this show is we're going to talk about transformations from monogamy to swinger to polyamory, ethical non-monogamy. So give us a breakdown of the different types of relationships, just so we understand what they are. And then how would you know? Does someone just pick which one they want? Or I'm sure there's a whole process because it's got to be more organic than that.
Well, yeah, there's definitely, yeah, I mean, there's so many different paths that you can go with it. And that's the beauty of it. It's like you really get to design it, what's going to work between you and your partner. So often there's some kind of shift where, somebody wants to have more in the relationship, or maybe there's a mismatch in sex drives, those type of things. And so when those start coming up, then now it gives us an opportunity to begin to discuss, well, what could that look like? And so quite often it ends up being opening the relationship up so that you're going to be able to give each other permission to have these encounters. So that's kind of the first step. And then
that's pretty remarkable. That's a big step for people, just to be vulnerable and say, hey, I would like to open up our relationship. I would like to open up our marriage. I can only imagine being a fly on the wall. And some of those conversations, I would think that some of those would go like, oh my God. I mean,
get the fuck out.
The same thing I was thinking. I've been thinking the same thing. Yeah, pretty exactly. What's interesting about that is that they're not even doing anything. They're just having a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it begins. It really does. So, and those are hard. I mean, it was for me, it was pretty difficult. It was very emotional when my husband came to me with that desire, and that's why I do what I do, is because there's, when you have support behind you, it makes it a lot more smooth. So,
is it more women that want to open a relationship, or is it more men, or is it just equal? Does it really matter? Okay. Well, based on your clients, what do you experience?
based on my clients, I would say it's more men. Yeah. In my experience. But, overall studies, it would be an interesting study to see.
So I talked about my friend last show, and she's married, happily married, and she has a boyfriend now. So they're a poly couple or trouble, and she brought it up. She did it. And so, you would think, well, to me, it's just fascinating how these conversations happen. And, I will say I will applaud and really give a lot of kudos to anyone who is bold enough to have those conversations, because I would imagine they'd be extremely difficult conversations to have.
Oh, they're very vulnerable conversations. But that's if you really love somebody, you're going to be vulnerable with them. You know?
Right. And that's what I think one of the saddest things I see about this is that they're in a monogamous relationship and they're practicing monogamy, and they don't even have the level of depth or communication to have conversations like that. It's very surface level. It's just, this is it. You're my partner. You're locked in. That's just the way it is. No, the further conversations discussed, and they don't get to share their fantasies. They don't get to share, a lot of other things, because I would imagine if you were monogamous and you were truly been there and been vulnerable and open and exploring in a monogamous way, whether it be kinky or whatever, you want to explore, that this conversation would be a lot easier. And then people that have the relationships that are just monogamous, you're my partner, don't talk to any other women, don't talk to any other man, don't you ever talk to anybody other than me, they can't flirt. I would imagine that it would be really difficult conversation, right?
Oh, yeah. Because that's just, it's a shut door. You're not even inviting or allowing something to come in or something to develop between the two of you. And that is so prominent in the, patriarchal society that we have. It really is. And depending on what group you're in, it's loud.
It seems to me like it's really changing. Seems that it's changing day by day and more. So let's talk about it. So someone has a conversation, or they want to have a conversation. What would be some ways that someone could actually start a conversation like that? Because they get to be really vulnerable. And I would imagine, hey, and the thing is, I think it's important from what I've learned from you is that these relationships, ethical non-monogamy, swinging, polyamory, are not cheating. You're not asking to cheat. These are ethical. These are clear boundaries.
They are ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy, either term.
Because, yeah, I've heard, and this is not the same thing, but I've heard of, like, they say, we can have an open marriage, but as don't ask, don't tell. I don't want to know that what you're doing. That just doesn't seem ethical, the kind of like cheating without a consequence, and that's not the way it is. Am I accurate in that?
Yeah, it's not the ideal. I always encourage everybody to really be open with what's going on. And it's, but yet I leave it up to them, if that's the way they want to try it. And sometimes they'll try it for a while and find out that maybe that wasn't the best way. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to see what's going to work for us. So if somebody wants to try it for a while, they can, until something happens and it needs to evolve into something different. But the best way to do it is to be really open and know what's going on and what's happening. I just find that it'll actually create a closeness rather than because the don't tell policy just still feels like it doesn't have a lot of integrity to it. And people are still, their minds are going to still go, still be running some kind of tape, some kind of insecurity. And again, some of that just comes from insecurities of not knowing how to handle it. And so sometimes just, getting the skills to be able to handle it is what needs to happen.
Well, I had a friend who was going down this path with her husband, and her husband just pretty much said, I don't care what you do. I just don't care. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care. And it was interesting, that simple word, I don't care.
Speaks volumes.
Yeah, it really hurt her. It really hurt her. And it wasn't permission. It was like, I don't care what you do. I just don't care. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care. And that didn't go very well.
Yeah, no, I mean, some people take that as a free ticket, right? But really, yeah, there's a huge message in that. You don't care about me. That's pretty loud and screaming, and it's gonna hurt, and it's because he doesn't know how to deal with his own feelings. So if he knows that she's with another guy, he's gonna feel something, and he doesn't wanna have to feel it. So it's easier to disengage, and it's not the healthiest thing to do.
Right. But that's not what she wanted. So he just disengages. Now, let's talk about the positive. So transformation into these relationships. So you have the talk, honey, and then, the wife says, yeah, let's try this. Okay, great. Do people know what they want to get into? Like ethical, non-monogamous or poly or, poly is more relationships, swingers, more of the physical realm.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's how they want to begin it. Do they want to being ethically non-monogamous? Some people are going to say, okay, we start working on pillars or boundaries of agreements, right? Of maybe how often this is going to happen, or is it going to be 2 or 3 times a year? Is it going to be once a week? What does it look like? And then, those could be people that are just going out on separate dates. Okay. They're going out on dates. Now, some people like to actually move towards more of the swingers where you're doing it together, and so it does depend on what they really want in the relationship. Some people, they just like the separate dates. That's what they want. They want that one-on-one time. Whereas with swinging, you're there with your spouse, oftentimes in the same bed, and you're seeing a lot. And that's where, some people don't want to see it and they want to shut it down because they don't want to feel it.
I'm either getting to the parties too early or getting there too late because I'm missing all this stuff. But apparently a lot of my friends, it's been made very clear to me and fascinating. And I really want to thank, and I love all of my friends that support and listen to the show. And I didn't realize they listened so intently to the show, and I'm very thankful for that. It's really blown my mind how a lot of our friends over the past week have really had different conversations with us and said, yeah, so we're in this lifestyle. And it was just fascinating how you wouldn't expect it because they look like the couple next door. And I was like, I can't believe. And, the stories they were sharing with us. And the one thing that I will say, and that's one question that I had is, how is your relationship? And now, a few of them have been in the lifestyle for some time, for, 10, 15
Yeah.
years. And the one thing that, me and my wife always saw them together, and the relationship was so tight. They're in such a great place. They love each other so much. And, that was the common denominator that I found from my friends that have been coming out to us, which I really found beautiful and fascinating. It was great. I'm like, oh my God, I never knew. Well, we are, and we wanted to share that with you. It was really beautiful how they were so proud of it. And they shared with us the impact on their relationship, to how strong the relationship was and the level of communication that they had. And, the sad part was that they really can't be authentic in the real world because of their jobs and other things. And I think we discussed this on the last show, is that the judgment of people that are judging a couple because they have an open marriage, and then both of the other people that are judging were actually having affairs. And so what I've discovered is that a lot of places in society say it's okay to have affairs. That's pretty much okay. But if you have permission from your spouse, that's not okay. No.
Yeah. It's a little twisted sometimes. It's coming around, but it can be still a little bit twisted. Yeah. And everybody is just the people next door. They are. We're all just normal people doing our thing. We're not some crazy, weird people that have problems and addictions and all that stuff. No, it's not like that at all. We are just normal people, and it's just a way of expressing ourselves. It's no different than, somebody's hobby of painting or I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's just another aspect of life, to express ourselves and to have joy and it's a fantastic thing that shifts relationships. And you're right, everybody is so different, but most people I talk to that are in the lifestyle, they have very happy marriages. And because they found a way to express that part of them, that piece of them. And when you can do that, it's just beautiful, and it's going to actually draw you closer together, unless you want to push it away because you don't want to feel something.
That's amazing. Yeah, yeah. And so these conversations, they honestly, to their core, and it's not a negative thing, that one person can't give you everything that you need or want. And I've learned that from you and my friends. And a relationship ebbs and flows, and there's different paths and facets to different relationships, right?
Yeah, there are, and I mean, you hit it on, and I think I probably talked about this last time, is sometimes we try and be everything to our spouse, and it's unrealistic. I mean, think about it. We're not. If you just think about normal life, like with my former partner, I'd ask him to go to the mall with me. And after about 15 minutes, he'd get MES, mall exhaustion syndrome, and he's looking for the closest bar. Well, I found that for me to have a pleasant shopping experience, I needed to invite somebody else. And so I did. And now I can go shopping and they can tell me, yes, that looks great. Oh, no, don't, and I have fun and I enjoy it. And it's not something he enjoys. Well, I can be okay with that. Why does he have to be the one to fulfill that part of me? And so it's the same thing, in sex and love and relationship, you don't have to be everything for everybody.
Yeah. And I think in an ethical, non-monogamous relationship, there's all different levels of intimacy. Like just from a monogamous relationship you may have. You may just want to have someone who can go shopping with. And, maybe be in a friendly date, and maybe you may hug, and maybe you may kiss, and maybe that's the level of intimacy that you have. Or it might just be emotional intimacy. Like
Absolutely.
just cry about the world or whatever it is. And so I guess there's all different levels, and it doesn't have to be just like if you have an ethical, non-monogamous relationship that you are having sex with that person, and they can all be different levels of intimacy. I've been reading up on this stuff.
Exactly. There are, and it's interesting because that's where it's funny. There's kind of a difference between sexes too, and it's funny how jealousy will show up because the man will be like, did you have sex with him? And the woman will be like, did you love her? Did you have, so the women are concerned about the emotional connection. The men are concerned about the physical aspect. Those are kind of the first things that come out of their mouth. But yes, it can. Sometimes it's just a matter of, this is the person that I want to go on a date with and talk with and just, have that other reflection in the conversation. It doesn't always have to be about sex.
So, there's all different kinds of relationships. And I think the level of intimacy is always there, and then polyamorous is more of an emotional, it's more in depth, and like you love that person. And that's under the guise of you can love many people. You don't love your kids differently. You love your kids all the same. And you have an abundance of love. And I think that's more of the polyamory type thing.
It is. It is definitely. It's, like the couple you were talking about, you actually, definitely spend more time with them. Often cases, it's a very equal type of relationship where, you're going to spend more equal parts with it. Sometimes not. Again, these are relationships that you guys get to design. Some people are in a polyamorous situation and maybe they see somebody once or twice a month, but they still love them deeply and still care about them. They're still there if something comes up, so it's definitely a deeper relationship. Where the lifestyle or swinging is more of like a sexual relationship. And even open relationships can be, more just a very sexual thing.
So if someone's wanted to transform their relationship and they're thinking of having a conversation with their partner, what are some tips you can give them to make the first baby steps to have that conversation with their partner a success? I would imagine that would be like, is alcohol involved? I don't know. It's like, can we do it? Let's do a shot first. Yeah, exactly.
Well, a glass of wine never hurt anything, but I can't say that I haven't had a few of those with a few beers. No, I think, that's one thing that I do is I support people in that way. But again, stay really curious with your spouse and bring it up more as curiosity is what I would invite you to do. And because you need to be curious why you want that, what's going on. So there's a lot there. And if you start getting curious, then the conversation is a little bit earlier rather than just like, hey, I want to have sex with somebody. It's like that one puts somebody into a shock factor and then you don't know what they're hearing after that. So we want it to be a conversation and, things like even how to build a sex room that provides conversation, different things, different books, different podcasts, different things like that. Like even this podcast is a point of talking, if somebody heard it and they're like trying to articulate these feelings that they're having. And then they hear this podcast, that synchronicity that I talk about, is then going to bring a more natural conversation. And, it's a conversation, but the thing is go slow. You don't have to, once you get it in your mind and this is the way you want to go, still need to take it slow. There's some belief systems that are probably going to pop up and different things, and there might not be, there's several people in the lifestyle that are, they're like, okay, we're going to give this a try, and they're in it and, they jump in and they go for it. And others take it a little bit slow, like they'll go down to a club and they might socialize for a while, a lifestyle club where you can engage in those activities, but you don't have to, and so you can just be around different people who are there and begin to talk to them and see how they handle things and what their relationships are like. So there's a lot of ways to just take it slow. And again, that's why I'm here. I'm here to support people, to walk through that, to help with the communication, help to learn how to process the emotions, do some mindset stuff, all those things to really ease into this.
That they seem like they're very likely in monogamy and is a lot. And it seems to me that these other relationships are a lot, but they seem more free-flowing and more organic and less restrictive. They seem like they would be a lot less stressful than that hardcore stand of, no touching, no looking at any other man or woman. I'm going to kill you, that kind of thing, that high level of I own you. Why was she looking at you? It seems like a lot. Well,
yeah, because a lot of that attachment's been released. It's like a flower, right? You see a flower, it's growing in the dirt. It's beautiful. It's being nourished by the dirt. It's, but then you're like, oh, I like that flower so much. And you go and you pull it up and then you're like just holding on to it, right? It no longer has its nutrients. It no longer has the water to help it to grow. It just basically suffocates and dies, right? So, that's what relationships can be. If we want to hold on to them so tight, that attachment's created and the suffering is there. So when you start to release some of that, you find more freedom. And that's what you see in people is more freedom.
I think this is quite fascinating. I'm glad that you're there because It's uncharted territory for a lot of people. And I think the one thing that I would just add is that if your spouse or your partner has this conversation with you, just take a moment and breathe. And don't look at this as like something's wrong with you or your relationship. They love you so much. They want to explore something new with you.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it.
And if you're thinking of venturing down these uncharted waters and you want assistance, you can reach Gayle at relationshipsevolving.com and she will help guide you. She is incredible. Thank you so much for being here. Always a fun conversation. I love it.
Thank you, Rob.
I love it. I'm just waiting to get the response now. It's just a fun topic of conversation, and it's definitely transformative.
It is. You know what? Relationships are transformation.
Thank you for being here today, Gayle.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much for your support and for taking the time out of your busy and precious day to listen to Life Transformation Radio. I so appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me, along with my very special guest, Gayle Lynn, to touch your heart, move your soul, and inspire you to live a life of transformation. I'm Rob Actis. Until next time.
This is Life Transformation Radio. Download complete.